Professor Mike Grandinetti is here today, and he's going to bring you more energy today with some surprises. But just to introduce him a little bit to you guys, he's going to give a class today on entrepreneurship and innovation. Okay, and he's a professor of management and marketing here at Holt. He's been teaching at Holt for a long time, and he's been one of the top favorites in the students. I've heard so much about him, and I look forward to listening to his class for a little bit as well. But he's also at Holt a global discipline lead for innovation and entrepreneurship, and he himself has served in board of directors in many startup companies, not only in the United States but globally as well. So please, if you have any questions at the end, feel free to ask him about his own experiences as well. But most of all, I hope you enjoy the class. I know I will as well, and I look forward to listening to you. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Extend my own personal welcome to all of you to our Boston campus. And before we start, how many of you are from outside of the U.S.? Wow. Okay, so let me ask again, how many of you are from the U.S.? Just a little few of you. Okay, so how many of you are from Asia? How many of you are from Latin America? Europe? Okay. Africa? All right, pretty good representation. So we're going to spend the next roughly 2 hours together, and the primary topic of this talk, this master class today, is how to succeed as a global entrepreneur. Now, I want to make clear that just because I'm going to talk mostly about traditional entrepreneurship, it doesn't mean that entrepreneurship is not interesting to those of you who might intend to go work for a global corporation, or to go work for an NGO or a social venture, right? Because the mindset today has changed dramatically in terms of what employers are looking for. And that's one of the reasons that we actually redesigned our own MBA program, right? And I was proud to be one of the architects of that MBA program. Because one of the things that our employers, the top 100 hiring authorities of MBAs told us is they wanted graduates that could hit the ground running, that were job ready on day one. And some very critical parts of that are you a self-starter? Can you lead other people? Okay? Do you bring a lot of energy to what you do? And all of those are very important traits of entrepreneurs. Okay? So we're going to talk a lot about today, yes, you have to work hard as a young entrepreneur, but you also have to work smart. And we're going to talk about both of those things, okay? Now, Boston is certainly a college town. In fact, it is the college town in the world. Okay? 160 colleges and universities are right around here, including some very well-known ones just down the street. Okay? But it is also a startup town, a huge startup town. And the question I want to ask you guys to sort of get some interaction going is, what are some of the anchor institutions that are required to enable a city to be a hotbed for startups? Okay? There are certain kinds of organizations or institutions that are required in order to provide the cradle, if you will, to allow very vibrant startup activity to happen. Of course, we all know Silicon Valley is one such city. Berlin is becoming more of that kind of city. Singapore, with great support from the government, has become that city. Okay? So what about in Chile, Santiago, Chile, and Startup Chile is becoming more of that kind of city. So, and please, we're all friends here already, right? So there's no bad answers, but remember, this is an American MBA program, and this is a master's program. And the job of the professor is not just to share their knowledge, it's also to facilitate learning from each and every member of the class, right? So what I love to do as I teach is I want to benefit. So there are roughly 100 of you in the room. You all come from different regions, you all have your own educational background, you all have your own professional experience, and so each of you brings a certain level of knowledge and wisdom to this classroom. And it would be a travesty not to tap into that, right? So very important in terms of my teaching style is a highly interactive discussion where students learn from one another. So let's start. what are some of the organizations required to get a vibrant startup community going? Please.
I don't know if a fact, but maybe accelerator company or like incubators.
Okay, so accelerators or incubators, cool. Devon, thank you. Yeah, please.
Financiers and venture capital.
Financiers and venture capitalists. What's your name?
Sam.
Sam, thank you. The other thing that my students also, there's a lot of things that they learn from me, but hand-eye coordination is probably the single most important. Okay? So by the time you finish one of my classes, you can go play professional sports anywhere in the world. Okay? What other kinds of organizations are there that are critical? So we heard financiers, we heard sort of accelerators. What other kinds of institutions? Some very obvious ones. Yeah?
Supporting laws.
I'm sorry?
Supporting laws.
Supporting laws. Okay, so certainly there's a legal and corporate infrastructure. What's your name? Thank you. Where are you from?
Brazil.
Nice to meet you. One or two other requests. Something quite obvious. What are we in right now?
Education.
And yes, and what kind of educational institutions typically?
Postgraduate and graduate.
Well, postgraduate, graduate, and your name is?
Maria Ángel,
And where are you from?
Venezuela.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
The specific kinds of educational institutions typically are research universities, right? Because you can imagine that technology is being created in the laboratories every day just down the street at that little college called MIT. And just another half mile down from there, another little college called Harvard. And all of these other research institutions that we have, right? So there's a tremendous amount of technology being created in labs that winds up being commercialized by entrepreneurs. Okay, so that's an important part of it. Okay? Now, next question is here in Boston. What are some of the startups that were born in Boston? Anybody know some startups that were born in Boston? Yeah, please. Gillette, yeah, Gillette was born for a guy with a beard. That's a great answer. Yes, Gillette, you're going way back. Huh? All right, yeah, please. Okay, the Boston Consulting Group. Yeah, that's cool, yeah. But let's talk more about companies that make stuff. Okay, yeah, please.
Making something Dropbox.
Dropbox, absolutely. And Drew Houston was an MIT kid that forgot his USB stick, and he jumped on a bus, and he said, wow, there's got to be a better way. Wouldn't it be great if I could just access my files from anywhere while I'm on a Greyhound bus or a train? So that's great. Your names, guys?
Edgar.
Edgar, you're from where?
Venezuela.
Cool.
Christoph from Germany.
Nice to meet you guys. Okay, how about you? Yeah.
Yes, Boston Property.
Boston Property?
Yes.
Okay, but that's great. Your name is? Whitton. Remember, but how about very much like Dropbox, people that make things? Any other examples, please?
New Balance.
New Balance, cool. And New Balance makes athletic equipment, right? Mostly footwear, right? Athletic footwear. Your name is?
Marina.
Nice to meet you, Marina. Couple of other ones, yeah.
Bose.
I'm sorry?
Bose.
Bose. Okay, Bose. Cool. Yeah, Bose was born at MIT as well. Your name is?
Jorge.
Nice to meet you, Jorge. There's a couple of obvious ones we're missing here. Yeah.
Donkeys.
What's that?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, yeah. All right. Now let me ask you guys a question. How many of you are carrying around a laptop right now? You have a laptop. How many have a laptop that's not Apple? Who has a non-Apple laptop? I realize there are fewer of those today. Okay. What are the key components inside that laptop? What's one of the most important things? So you have the CPU, of course, but there's another piece that if you don't have it, your laptop is just a paperweight. What would that be?
Hardware.
Software.
Okay. The operating system, some people call it Windows. And it was founded by a little company in 1975 in a dorm room at Harvard University. And it's called what? Microsoft, yes. Now, that's an easy one, guys. Okay? So, Dunkin' Donuts, I understand that's a very important invention. I got it, right? Now, let's ask about another one that was born here in Boston. Now I get the things going. How about in the very back of the room? Yes. Yes. And what's your name?
Rihanna.
Rihanna, where are you from?
Rihanna.
Rihanna, where are you from, Rihanna?
Toronto.
That's an awesome catch, okay? Too bad the Toronto Maple Leafs don't play as well as you do, okay? All right, so maybe what about some current startups, some current companies born in Boston? How about any women in the room that are fashionistas? Any fashionistas, any women that really like fashion, but they're on a beer budget, but they like Dior and Chanel? Yeah? So what would you think? What's a company born right here in Boston that women who don't have the money for great fashion, but can still wear designer clothing.
For rental, like rental?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's called Rent the Runway.
Yeah.
Okay, and Rent the Runway just raised about $70 million in venture capital. Okay? Now, how many of you know about sort of, not Uber style ride sharing, but kind of temporary car rental? So who's the company that started that?
Relay, right?
No, not Relay, right? Zipcar. Okay, your name is?
Hani Hasan,
Okay, where are you from?
Indonesia.
Nice to meet you. So Zipcar started here in Boston. Okay, so there's a obviously this guy, he did okay for himself. All right, now see this really extraordinarily good-looking group of people here. You know who that is? See this little cute little guy right here? That's Billy Gates. Before he started shaving, okay? And Billy Gates, of course, brought together a group of his friends, and they started Microsoft, just down the road, right? It's founded in 1975. And another company that nobody mentioned, an incredibly important company, it ultimately was deemed to be illegal, is a company called Napster. What did Napster do? Why was Napster such a profound company? What did they ultimately do? They were founded at Northeastern. Yeah, please, you have your hand up? Yeah. No? Okay. Yes, please.
They started to share the music.
Share the
And
music.
free.
And your name is?
Aki from Japan.
Cool. Nice, Aki. Thank you. And was the sharing something that the music companies liked? Did they want their music shared in that way? No. It was extremely disruptive, right? It was the beginning of the end of the old music industry. Because what Napster allowed to happen is people could share freely MP3 files. And so the revenues of record companies went off the cliff, and they continued to decline year after year, although Steve Jobs did a great job when he created iTunes to help the record companies at least generate revenue by their popular songs. So the record companies, of course, wanted to sell the entire album. Okay? And Steve Jobs said, listen, no one's buying an entire album anymore because this guy named Sean Fanning from Boston came up with this approach to rip off all of your music. So if you want to make any money, why don't we work together on iTunes? And this is where iTunes and the iPod became this iconic product that allowed Apple to recover from literally the brink of death, right? Apple was 2 weeks away from running out of cash. Okay? Crazy, right? And their ability to understand how to deliver an extraordinary music consumption experience was the beginning of the renaissance of Apple, which is today the most valuable company in the world. Okay? Zipcar. Now, what do I do, and why am I in front of you today? I have spent most of my professional life, I'm an engineer by undergraduate training. I worked in Silicon Valley back when Dave Hewlett and Bill Packard were running HP, and I worked for them. And it was an extraordinary company. How many of you have heard of Hewlett? Most of you know Hewlett Packard, right? But you don't know the Hewlett Packard that I worked for, because when I worked for Hewlett Packard, they were considered the most admired company in America by Fortune magazine. It was the company that every engineer wanted to work for, just the same way that today people want to work for Facebook and Google. So I got that training, I came back here, I got my MBA, I went to work for a consulting firm called McKinsey, strategy firm. Spent several years working with all high-tech clients. But because I'm an engineer, I enjoy building stuff. I didn't necessarily enjoy whispering in the ears of others. And so I started my career where I began working on the founding of 7 software companies, okay, over 25 years. And that's a pretty intense lifestyle. Okay? And I was lucky enough that as part of a great team with each startup, we took 2 public on the NASDAQ, and we wound up selling 5 of those companies. Oracle acquired one of our companies, IBM acquired one, AT&T acquired one, Symantec, another company you may know. So this has been sort of how I've kept myself kind of busy. Okay? But at the same time, I've been living a dual life. Thank God it's not illegal, all right? The dual life I started living is that back in 1996, I started teaching entrepreneurship at MIT. And I did that for over 10 years and was very immersed in the ecosystem of MIT as a judge in the 100K entrepreneurship competition, and saw how technology gets created in great universities and how it gets commercialized. right? And I taught both at the MBA and the exec ed level. But about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided I would no longer continue to be in an operating role in startups. And so today what I do is I spend a couple hundred days a year on the road. I teach at all of our campuses. But I also spend an incredible amount of time with people of your generation as a mentor in all of these different accelerators and startup ecosystems all around the world, and serve on many boards of these companies and across the whole range from clean tech, Greentown Labs and EcoFuel, to health tech, which is hacking health, to traditional, more software-oriented types of activities, right? So I have a window that I'm able to bring into the classroom, right, which is really a lot of fun, okay? Now here's Rent the Runway, by the way, okay? That one was placed out of sequence, okay? But one of the things that I'm also involved in right now is I run a program here in Boston called Startup Next. Now, how many of you know what an accelerator is? What does an accelerator do? Why have they become so important lately? Please.
Well, they offer services that are needed by companies, so they can focus on their product rather than accounting and
Okay, well that's more of an incubator. And your name is?
Oliver.
Oliver, you're from?
Berlin.
Nice to meet you. Anybody else? What's an accelerator? You had actually mentioned accelerators before that.
Yes, so
Yeah.
they kind of focus more on providing funding for startups.
Seed stage funding for sure. And the most important thing they provide is mentorship. And so it's called mentor capital, which is a play on the phrase venture capital, right? And we're going to see about a third of our way through, I'm going to show you a 9-minute video of a company I think you'll all be very excited about, as they have just graduated from an accelerator called Xstars, one of the leading accelerators in the world. And they're giving their pitch, their presentation, to a room full of many hundreds of investors on what is called demo day. And what accelerators do is they help accelerate young startups. And so what Startup Next does, the organization I lead, is we help young entrepreneurs get into the world's leading accelerators. Because it's only now today, you need to be in a top-tier accelerator in general to be able to get the kind of resources, the kind of network that are going to allow you to be successful. So we're going to talk about all this stuff, okay? So we help startups, young startups, get fit, okay? So how many of you are working on a dream? You want to start your own company? Raise your hands high. You want to start your own company. Raise them high. You don't have to be shy. You don't have to raise them like this. I want you to raise them high, please. Just let me see how many. All right, so let me ask some of you, what kinds of companies, what kind of company would you like to start? Do you know yet?
Yeah, a nonprofit.
And what area would you like to focus on?
Social impact and civic engagement.
Cool, awesome. So we're going to talk more about that later. Okay, so what's your name?
Eric.
And where are you from?
US.
Cool, wow. All right, who else? Who else wants to tell me what dreams they have for a startup? Yeah.
Alternative energy.
Cool, and anything specific?
Solar.
Solar, okay, and your name is?
Steve.
And you from the US as well?
Yes.
Wow, okay. That's unusual.
Healthcare, also in CNA training.
Okay.
And job ready.
Okay, but in the healthcare space. Cool, what's your name?
Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin, where are you from?
US.
Wow. I think I'm dreaming. Okay, one or two more. What other people want to start a company? Yeah.
I'm thinking about like a consulting company in digital marketing.
Okay, cool. Digital marketing company, great. I teach some digital marketing classes. There's so much change that young people have such an advantage today. And your name is?
Gabriela.
And you're from? Nice to meet you, Gabriela. All right, one last one. Anybody back? Yeah, please.
Education.
Okay.
Creating a new city form of city programs.
Cool. And your name?
Diana.
And are you in Boston this week? Are you going to be around this week?
This weekend.
Okay, because I'm running an education technology meetup on Wednesday night at MIT, which you would be welcome to come to next time. Yeah.
I want to be a medicine and a diagnostic company.
A diagnostic company. Okay, cool. And do you have a medical background?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And where would you start this company?
I just right now try to start it in China, but I still prepare for business.
Okay, and what's your name?
Schuba.
Nice to meet you. All right, so anyway, so some of you are working on a dream. How many of you would maybe like to go work for another person's startup? A few of you, okay. Anybody have any startups in mind that you want to go work for? Because there's a lot of them out there today, right? They're being born every day, there are being more and more startups, right? And sometimes the best thing is to go work for someone else's startup, learn from them, and then go start your own company, okay? But I will tell you this right now, and it's an easy thing to say, but I guarantee you it's true. There has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, all right? Now, why do you think I say that? What do you think are some of the reasons that this is true? Why is it such a great time? Yeah, please. Availability of information, right? The web and Google let you figure out all kinds of stuff. I hope your dentist is not going to like me if you keep asking questions, okay? So availability of information. What are some of the other things that make it easier than ever before? And I don't want to mislead you. Being successful is really challenging. The odds are stacked against you. But the ability to start a company, right, is much easier than ever before. Please. Yeah.
The improvement of communications,
Okay.
easier to reach people.
Okay, so thank you. Your name? Okay, and from France. Okay, thank you. So the improvement of communications makes it easier to reach people, right? Obviously the web, and my friend over here, Gabriella, who wants to start a digital marketing organization, right, using social media, makes it much easier. Devin?
The amount of resources and support that's available at the incubators.
Absolutely, great answer. So all of the mentorship and all of the support that's available, that's all an important part of it, okay? So I'm going to just start to maybe give you a little bit more background on why all of a sudden, for the first time in history, more and more MBA students are choosing careers in entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship, okay? And I'm going to try to distinguish later between what a social entrepreneur, social ventures, and an NGO is, or nonprofit, because there's some important differences to be aware of, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the new normal economy. Let's talk about what's happening and what does this new entrepreneurial revolution mean to you as you think about pursuing a business degree, an MBA. Okay, why is it happening now? And then once we get through that, then I want to talk more about how to focus on you. We'll go from the market perspective to what do you need if you want to be a successful entrepreneur. And again, I want to also make it clear that many, many organizations today are placing a much higher value on entrepreneurship than ever before. So we look at the Disney Corporation, we look at Nike, we look at Barclays Bank, we look at Qualcomm. Many of you may not know the name Qualcomm, but I guarantee you that you know them well because their chipset is in your mobile phones, okay? We look at Sprint, we look at Microsoft, I can go on. And all of these companies have entered into relationships with organizations like Techstars that create a linkage between an accelerator of entrepreneurs to build software and applications and extensions to the platform. So how many of you use the Nike Fuel Band, for example, when you run? Anybody? Okay, a few of you, right? Most of you know what that is, right? It's one of the very early watches, like the Fitbit. It was developed in conjunction with Apple, and it allows you to measure a whole bunch of things about your athletic activity, right? And so what Nike does is once a year they invite in, through a very rigorous, very competitive application process, 10 entrepreneurs, of which maybe several thousand had applied, and they start building new apps for Nike. Disney has entrepreneurs come in a very similar way, and they start working on new games and new content for themselves. Barclays Bank cares about financial technology. They want to make it easier for consumers to do business with them. They want to make it easier for their traders to work. So Barclays brings in young entrepreneurs to create financial technology to extend their platform, okay? So many of you may wind up working for a large global brand, but increasingly what's happening is, right, about 5 years from now, a third of the Fortune 500 is going to disappear off the face of the earth. Okay? Does that sound insane to you? It used to be that the Fortune 500 was this extraordinary accomplishment which ensured that they would survive for many years. It used to be, back in the 1920s and 1930s, that a Fortune 500 company would live for 75 or 100 years. But because of the rapid pace of change, because of the incredible disruptive approaches that young startups are creating, more and more Fortune 500 companies are becoming extinct. Okay? And so what happens is that the large corporations need to continue to regenerate themselves. And they need to do it at a speed and with a sense of urgency that they've never been able to do, because as they get bigger, they get slower, okay? And it gets harder and harder. And I'm sure many of you, you've all worked before, right? Anybody work in an organization that had just a little bit of bureaucracy, and that's why you're here today? Yeah? Probably, right? Because you want to be able to move faster, you want to make things happen, right? That's part of the reason why you're in this room today, why you're thinking about MBA. You want to work for a company that appreciates your point of view, you want to work for a company that has innovation in its DNA, right? And so one of the ways that these large companies are getting it is they're partnering with entrepreneurs. So how many of you want to go work for a large global brand today? That's your aspiration. Raise your hands high. Okay. And that's cool, right? I guarantee you, if you understand the way the entrepreneurial economy works, you will be a much more effective contributor to your employer. Okay. So what's happening in this new normal economy? We've got the maker movement, social entrepreneurship, and MBAs flocking to tech and entrepreneurship. Does anybody know what the maker movement is? Why we have these maker fairs all over the world, like 120 cities around the world? We have a maker fair, M-A-K-E-R, maker fair. What does that mean? Anybody understand what the maker movement is? No? Okay. It is cool to make stuff again. It used to be that there was a belief that an advanced economy, a G7 or a G20 economy, shouldn't make stuff. That making stuff was for emerging economies. But today, making stuff, right, physical, tangible goods, is considered to be cool again, right? And so, for example, we have, anybody ever use a 3D printer before? Okay, a few of you, yeah? What did you use it for?
Designing a bulb.
A bulb, okay, cool.
Exterior design.
Okay, and how about you, Devin?
Initially, I worked for a fixturing.
A fixturing company, okay. So who doesn't know what 3D printing is? Does not know what a 3D printer is? Everybody knows what a 3D printer is, yeah? No? Okay. So a 3D printer is something that allows you to print a physical object. So today, you can physically print, you don't mind if I touch your phone, do you? You can print, physically print a prototype of this phone. You can literally physically print pretty much anything that your imagination can conceive of, okay? And printing is probably a misnomer, because what you're doing is you're manufacturing with a printer. You are creating prototypes with a printer. And the company that does this, that's the most commercially known, is MakerBot. Okay? And MakerBot has a local space right here in Boston, although they're based in New York City. Okay? So what's happened is that you no longer need to set up a manufacturing operation to manufacture something. Any one of you can go home today, you can go to a MakerBot store, you can spend $800, you can download free software from Autodesk, 123 Cash, or from Adobe, Photoshop 3D, and you can set up your own manufacturing operation in your apartment, in your kitchen, okay, in your study. And what's happening is when you combine the maker movement with crowdfunding, all of a sudden we start to see this extraordinary renaissance of activity where young people are making things by going out and promoting their ideas on Kickstarter. How many of you have raised money on Kickstarter? Anybody ever tried to do a Kickstarter campaign before? No? You guys know what Kickstarter is though, right? I gotta believe, how many of you have friends that have tried to raise money on Kickstarter? Okay? What kind of project?
Actually, it was kind of difficult.
Yeah, of course it's difficult.
Because
Yeah.
we're talking about Brazil, so we cannot compare this market to the
All right.
US.
And what kind of product did they try to get funded?
He was actually trying to fund a ticketing project.
Okay,
So
cool.
it was trying to be ahead of the major competitors.
Okay.
He couldn't do it.
What kind of ticketing? Like event ticketing?
Ticketing.
Like Eventbrite. An Eventbrite. Okay, and what's your name? And you're from Brazil? Thank you. Great catch. All right. So all of a sudden we have this extraordinary new, and I'm going to show you some examples of some other, but everybody knows what the Pebble watch is, for example? You know the Pebble watch? It was the first smartwatch, you know? So the Pebble watch came out on Kickstarter, raised $8 million in its first round. And a few months ago, back in February, they released the second version of that watch. And they raised $20 million from people just like you. Okay? It's completely transformed the world. Okay? It is a global movement. So I don't care where you're from, if you look at this map, there are maker movement communities all around the globe. At last count, about 123 of them all over the world. Okay? Now, a second thing that is very, very powerful is there's a completely new way of doing business. And this new way of doing business is creating communities. Communities of self-interest, communities of practice. Anybody know the company called Threadless? Threadless. Okay, tell us what Threadless does, my man.
Threadless, I believe, allows its customers to design their own t-shirts, and then based on other participants' reviews, they get made.
Cool. Okay, tell me your name.
Ben?
Where are you from, Ben?
Boston.
Wow. Big commute to you today, huh? All right.
About 10 minutes.
All right, good. That's cool. All right, so Ben is giving us a very accurate but a slightly older version of what Threadless is. Thank you. And so Threadless started out about 14 years ago. They're based in Chicago. And what they are is they are what we call a multi-sided platform. Now, other examples of multi-sided platforms are eBay, Uber, and Airbnb. What a multi-sided platform does is it brings, and LinkedIn, of course, is another one, right? And multi-sided platforms bring together people with mutual interest, right? And they try to facilitate transactions. Anybody know Etsy? E-T-S-Y, Etsy out of Brooklyn. Anybody know Etsy? Raise your hands. Okay, what does Etsy do?
It's a place where you can buy stuff that other people make, and
Okay.
you can look at the online shops.
Cool.
That they make.
Thank you. So Etsy is yet another example. And what they do is they deal in custom-made, handcrafted merchandise. So people from anywhere in the world no longer have to go to their town, village, square, roll out a blanket, and put out their merchandise, their handcrafts. There's a global market for what they do. And so that's what these multi-sided platforms are. One of the very first was this company, Threadless. And what Threadless tapped into was a global community of graphics designers. Anybody in the room have a graphic design background? Anybody at all? Yeah? Okay. And so they created a community where they crowdsourced their graphic designs from people all over the world. And so why would people freely upload their designs? What would cause someone to say, you know what, I'm going to upload my graphics designs to this community? What do you think some of the reasons were, some of the motivations for individuals to do that? Please. Yeah, please.
They want to get their art seen.
They wanted to get their art seen. Awesome. And when you get it, and what's your name?
Rihanna.
Rihanna, I'm sorry, Rihanna. Bad memory, right?
Thanks.
So Rihanna, so why would you want to get your art seen? What would that do?
Give you recognition.
Give you recognition, give you feedback on how you might improve. And so what our friends from Threadless did is they created this very interesting community of people that aspire to work professionally as graphics designers or as artists. And they gave them exposure, they gave them feedback, they gave them mentoring, and at some point, some of them got very, very good. In fact, one person won 8 times and got so popular that one of the major concert bands, many of you are too young to appreciate Dave Matthews, I know, from a different generation, but there's an example of one of them being tapped by the Dave Matthews Band to create their concert t-shirts, okay? And so Threadless today doesn't just do t-shirts, they do anything where you might put graphic design on a piece of fabric or a piece of artwork, okay? Etsy is very similar. Etsy is a multi-sided market where they mentor craftspeople. It could be indigenous people, it could be people from urban slums, it could be people from anywhere, Native American Indians, for example, right? Or Inuits from up in the Arctic region, who bring their own approach to craftmaking. And they train them. They mentor them. They train them on how to manage inventory. They train them on how to price. Okay? So there's a whole new way of doing business today that's transformed employment. Okay? All right? Now let's talk about another fascinating example called social entrepreneurship. Most of you recognize the gentleman with the microphone, right? Probably one of the most famous men in the world. Okay? And so we go back to my friend, tell me your name again?
Eric.
Eric. So what Eric talked about is he wanted to start a nonprofit. Okay? Now, a social entrepreneur is someone who applies entrepreneurial principles in order to create positive social impact. So nonprofits are an older form of organization to have social impact. The challenge with nonprofits is they rely 100% on charity, on donations. And as we went through the 2007-2008 collapse of the market, right, financial Armageddon, what happens is when people see 50% of their bank accounts decimated in a couple of days, they no longer have the will or the ability to write a check to a nonprofit, and we see the nonprofits, shrink in large order. And so I teach in a very innovative program in San Francisco, which is our Masters of Social Entrepreneurship program, where what I tell my students is first I need to teach you and train you on how to be a great entrepreneur. And then once you understand the fundamental principles of entrepreneurship, I can teach you how to be a great social entrepreneur, okay? Because you're applying those principles to a specific industry. And it's a unique industry, its own ecosystem, its own set of accelerators, its own set of investors, its own set of people that participate, okay? And the reason that social entrepreneurship has become such a huge force in the world is because we're trying to create businesses that are sustainable long term. How many of you know Tom's shoes? Raise your hands if you know Tom's shoes. How many of you own a pair of Tom's shoes? Why do you like, what is it about Tom's shoes that you like? What is it about this business? What do they do?
I don't know, they do shoes that are alpargatas, that are from Argentina and all Latin American countries.
Yeah.
And I think that they, if you buy a pair of shoes, they will give people in Argentina shoes.
Right.
That,
Tell me your name? Louisiana. And you're from Argentina?
Venezuela.
Venezuela. Okay. So what they do is they've created a business model which is called differential pricing. Okay. And what that means is they will go and sell espadrille shoes, right? These very, very sort of relaxed shoes, weekend kind of shoes. Although a lot of our students love to wear Tom's shoes to school, right? Because they're very comfortable, almost like wearing slippers. And they sell them at all kinds of retail stores all around the developed world. Here, for example, at Nordstrom's or Macy's. And they sell them for a lot of money, and they generate a lot of profit. But what they do with that money is what defines them as social entrepreneurs. They take that money and they manufacture shoes, and then they charter a plane, and they fly to some city or rural area where there's a lot of poverty and where children cannot afford shoes. And they will donate thousands, tens of thousands of pairs of shoes for free to these poor children, right? So Brad McCaskey is a business person who's decided that what he wants to do is have positive social impact on the world, and so he creates profit in order to allocate funding to the ability to give out shoes. Now they do eyeglasses as well. Is that why you were raising your hand?
Yeah, they do eyeglasses and coffee.
And coffee. Now it's called Fair Trade Coffee, right? What's your name?
Diana.
Diana, where are you from?
California.
Cool. Oh, California?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Good recovery. Okay. And so this is a very popular model. In fact, there's another company in India called Aravind Eye Care that recognizes that because of dietary deficiencies, rural Indian villagers wind up with a very high incidence of cataracts. And so the founding doctors of Aravind Eye Care did something very similar. In fact, they inspired this model. We're going to perform cataract surgery in some of the top surgical hospitals in the world, and we're going to charge people from developed countries full price. We're going to take the money we earn from surgery. We're going to go back to India, and Bangladesh, and Pakistan, and all of these countries, and we're going to perform free cataract surgery for people that can't afford it, right? So this is, Eric, a beautiful thing, right? To see using market principles, right? The kinds of things that you're coming to potentially study at home to solve world problems, okay? Now, let's also talk about women in entrepreneurship, and specifically women in tech entrepreneurship. Okay, when I started my career, it was very unusual to see women starting companies, but that has changed for the better. So these are three women that I've had the privilege of mentoring amongst many others. Heather Stroll created a stroke triage device. I mentored her in Techstars. Fiona from the Founders Institute set up a platform to help care for aging parents, so that when you have nurses and family members and extended friends, that you were able to coordinate care for that person, so that you didn't have all of this inefficiency of communication, so that you knew exactly what medicines had been taken, you knew exactly the status of the patient at any given moment, and the next person can pick up. This young woman started a scholarship platform because she, during the 2007-2008 financial market collapse, both of her parents had been laid off, and her father turned to her and said, "I'm very sorry to say this, but we can no longer afford to send you to college." And so what she did is she applied for 600 scholarships. And what she realized when she applied for 600 scholarships is every single time she applied for a scholarship, it was a different form. So it was this insanely inefficient approach. And so she said, like any great entrepreneur, I'm going to fix that problem. Right? That's what entrepreneurs do. They fix problems. They repair what they think is wrong with the world. And so she came up with a common platform so that you can apply for scholarships using one form, and you can leverage that across any scholarship that you are eligible for. Okay? Now this young woman is another extraordinary young woman. She's been in my classrooms here, San Francisco, and other places all around the world. She's from Nigeria, and her name is Jessica Matthews, and Jessica is from a very prominent family, so she got to study at Harvard. And as she was graduating from Harvard, she was thinking about what she wanted to do. And as you can imagine, when you're a very smart student and you graduate from Harvard, you got a pretty reasonable set of choices in front of you. She had gone back to Nigeria to visit her family. And at that time, she saw a bunch of poor kids playing soccer. But they weren't using a soccer ball. They were using rags wrapped in tape, okay, on some dirt field. And she was struck by how joyous these children were. That no matter what a child, maybe what conditions they may be in, when they're playing, they're full of joy, right? We all understand that. So she had this brilliant idea, even though she's not an engineer. Wouldn't it be cool if we could take the energy transferred into that soccer ball and store it? Make that soccer ball a battery, an energy storage device. And then bring that soccer ball home, and with a USB connector, literally plug in a light, so you no longer have to burn carcinogenic kerosene. So you no longer have to pollute your lungs because it's one of the highest forms of cancer in the world. You no longer have to walk to town 3 miles and spend 10% of your monthly wages to charge your cell phone, because the cell phone in a lot of these economies is the lifeblood, right? It's the lifeblood. So she came up with this idea called Uncharted Play, and she started a social venture. And I've gotten the privilege of working with her. A number of my students in my Masters of Social Entrepreneurship class did consulting projects for her, and she was just named by Forbes magazine as one of 30 entrepreneurs under the age of 30 that's changing the world. Okay. So, and then the last part of this section, why are MBAs moving increasingly to tech and entrepreneurship? Okay. Well, the good news is people are in general adaptive. As Charlie Darwin would indicate, would be an important part of, what allows the species to continue to thrive, right? And MBAs are changing, and the way we educate MBAs is changing dramatically. Okay? Business schools see a big shift, right? They see that the industries that hire MBAs are shifting, right? Wall Street, as you may know, doesn't have nearly the demand for MBAs that it once did, right? It used to be that if you went to a business school, as many people as wanted to work in the finance industry could get a job there, but those days are over, right? Everything has changed. Technology companies, thank you Mr. Steve Jobs, are able to take much more advantage of MBAs because technology has gotten much more mainstream, right? Steve Jobs created this consumerization of technology that makes it not the center of something, but an underlying enabling factor only. And so people like you who grew up with technology understand it, and you can apply it to solving problems, okay? So huge shift in supply and demand, okay? Now, how many of you are engineers? Okay, all right. A reasonable, maybe 15, 20% of you, right? And I'm an engineer myself, so this is not about anything other than just acknowledging the reality that a lot of great companies no longer are started by engineers. The women that started Rent the Runway are not engineers, for example, right? They're fashionistas, okay? So you don't have to be a techie to start a company. Anybody can do that. And more MBAs are starting companies, right? So, many and more are going to Silicon Valley than they are to Wall Street. And what you might find amazing, because I find it amazing, is you know where Stanford University is located? Where is Stanford University located? It's in Palo Alto, California. It's at the very heart of Silicon Valley. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard were the very first startup to be born out of Stanford University. Just like we have MIT, creating many companies, Hewlett Packard was born at Stanford University in 1939. Okay, going back a long time. Okay, and their very first product was an audio oscillator that was used by the Walt Disney Corporation in their classic movie called Fantasia to deliver a lot of the sound effects in that movie. They won an Academy Award for that invention. Okay, and there's this famous HP garage. So one would think that the students that go to school in the heart of Silicon Valley would have been mostly choosing high-tech companies, and you would be wrong. Like any other MBA program, they were going primarily to consulting firms in Wall Street. And only in the last couple of years are you seeing students from even the top schools completely shifting direction. Why do you think that is? What is leading to the shift? Why are students all of a sudden saying, we want to go into tech, we want to go into entrepreneurship? What are some of the factors underlying that? Yeah, please.
Huge amount of venture capital available.
Certainly venture capital, certainly a lot more choices than before. Yes, absolutely. What other reasons? Thank you, Ben, right? Thank you, Ben. What other reasons are there? Yeah, please.
The way that
Okay, so there's a huge push toward technology, right? But let me ask you, what generation are most of you a part of? What do most people call you? You're millennials, and so what do you guys stand for? What does your generation stand for? Which is very different than previous generations, right? Because that's an important part of it. So what do you guys stand for? What's important to you?
internet.
Well, okay, hold on. Right? So, one of the things that I think you stand for, that I understand you stand for, is you stand for being challenged, you stand for meaningful work, you stand for not having to do FaceTime at work, right? You want to get instant feedback, you want opportunities to grow, opportunities to thrive in your careers. You don't want to have to wait 20 years punching the clock and getting gray hair around your temples before someone says, okay, now you're ready for a promotion, right? And unfortunately, Wall Street doesn't offer those kinds of careers, and a lot of large organizations offer less. So what students are seeing is they're seeing an organization, the technology industry, where there's rapid growth, where there's rapid opportunities for advancement, where there's very interesting work, very creative work. And that's one of the reasons that this is happening at such a profound level, okay? So what's happening in the new normal economy here, right? I mean, you read the papers and you look at what's happening in Greece, and they basically just emasculated the finance minister in Greece, and it's not looking very positive that they're going to work their way through the debt crisis, and that's going to create havoc in the Eurozone, and we've seen what's happened in Portugal, and we've seen what's happened in Spain, and we see what's going on in Italy, right? So we know there's a lot of challenge, right? We see that there's dramatic changes in the emerging economies today. The economy is slowing down.